always nice to make first impressions. So I guess we'll get to like each other when this is over. But
Okay, man.
so your name's Ricky, and you're from.
I'm originally from Kentucky, live in Chicago.
How the hell do you go from Kentucky to Chicago?
Teaching.
Okay, so you're a former teacher.
Yeah, sociology professor. I came out of grad school, wanted to be a teacher, was ready to take a job wherever I could get one. I applied all over the country, ended up getting a job in Palos Hills, Illinois. And so for 21 years, I've been a college professor, community college professor.
What was that culture like for you to go from Kentucky? Because Illinois can be city, but also can be pretty country too. So was it a huge culture shock going from Kentucky to hop into where you were going to school at?
It definitely was. I mean, I'm from Horse Cave, Kentucky, which is about as small as it sounds like it is. Population 2,000, a little tiny town. I wound up going to Western Kentucky University for school, Bowling Green, which is like maybe 75,000. But at the time,
That's
that was a
school
level
for a small town. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a level up. And then I ended up moving to Louisville for a couple of years. That's where I did grad school, got my sociology degree there. And so by the time that I moved to the Chicago area, I mean, I'm in the suburbs, so it's not that big of an adjustment, but it's kind of been gradual, moving up from smaller to bigger.
How broke did you go your first year in teaching? Because when I taught, I spent so much money on the classroom that it was like I had to bounce clubs at night just to balance out my lesson plans. Did you have the same situation where you find, because the funding for being a teacher is terrible?
Yeah, it's not great. And you don't go into teaching to get rich.
No, but I don't think you
sure.
understand until you're in it.
Yeah.
Just how unrich you are going to be.
You find out quickly. You really do. You find out quickly. And when I got hired, I had been married a few years, and we had just had our first kid. I got 5 daughters. We just had my oldest.
Well, you have 5 daughters. How do you have your hair?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's getting gray. It's starting to get
3,
gray.
And I mean,
yeah,
not even.
Yeah, I got to color this. Believe me, this is grayer than yours for sure. If I went natural.
See, I stopped once I got to the point where my kids informed me that they're all double digits, that I'm old. There was no point in me to carry the facade. I said the hell with it. I don't even at this point. If I had enough ear hair coming out, I'd probably braid it before I cut it. I just don't care anymore. So you got a young family. You're in the classroom. What was it about teaching that drew you? Was it you're looking for that one mind? You're inspired, pass. Like what is the thing? Because being a teacher never stops. Doesn't matter what your other jobs are. You find yourself that teaching mindset all the time. Is that the same thing with you? Like no matter where this path has taken you, you always kind of go back to your teaching roots whenever you're trying to get things going?
Yeah, there's the teacher in you never goes away. And I mean, I've been in that career all the way up until I took this job that I have now with this new show. I'm still getting used to not being a professor. It's going to be like a phantom limb for me for a while,
Getting out of teaching, given the climate where we're seeing, on one side we're seeing accusations of grooming, and other sides we're seeing just the level of education that kids are coming out of school with is not matching their grades. Do you look back and be like, even though, because here's the toughest thing about being a teacher, is when you have other opportunities come on that vastly pay more, vastly do things better for your family, and you have to make that choice. Was that a tough decision for you to walk away from teaching, given how things are now? Because when you lose a good teacher, it affects the entire school. So was that tough for you to make that jump?
I'm proud of the years that I put into it, and it was always for me the relationship between myself and the students, right? Those moments in the classroom where real learning is happening, where you're getting kids to think critically. That was the beauty of it. Being able to maybe help them gain the confidence in their own dreams, right? To say that if this guy, look, I was 6 years out of high school before I even went to college. When I was in high school, there were people that thought that I was going to flunk out before I graduated. I remember one year I had 2 Ds and 2 Fs. I might have had a C and a B in there, but that still doesn't add up real good. And so,
No, that's under 2. You couldn't play ball.
yeah, no, I hated school, man. I really did. My mind wasn't with it. I always had my mind on other things, and I thought that I'll find some path. I'm not going to go to college is how I approached it. I thought when I graduate high school, I'm done. And for 5 or 6 years, I kind of tried to do it my own way. Back in those days, baseball cards and memorabilia were big, and I was into that.
It's big.
You think it's big. That's
you
right.
don't realize is that when you got your Ken Griffey rookie junior card, speaking from experience, and you look at the little book and it says it's worth, $2,000. But what you don't know is that there is a kid with a Ken Griffey Jordan in every city in America.
Yeah.
So then when you go to the show and be like, I have a Ken, and then you see just walls of them, they're like, yeah, it might be worth that, but we're not paying. Yeah, I found that out the hard way because I had collections and collections.
The reason that the old stuff was worth a lot is that everybody was throwing it out because they didn't think it was going to be worth anything.
It wasn't a circulation. It goes back.
Right.
It's the Beanie Baby theory.
Yes, absolutely. Like once everybody's hip to it and they think that they're going to save for their kids' college funds or whatever with it, well, then it's dead at that point. So I had to find a better way. And so I decided to go to college and wasn't sure if I would even make it or not. Honestly, man, the first semester, I was so proud just to get through it.
Do you think more kids should take time off before they make the decision to go to school? Try to figure out whether it's a trade school, because I know trade schools, we need to start bringing those. I personally feel that trade schools are just as important in college. But there's the 3, when I was growing up, and we're around the same age, so it was either military, college, or a trade school. Like you had to have, as young men, you had to have one or the other. Because the fourth thing was deadbeat, loser, bum. So that was the choice. Was it ever a time you thought about trade school, or was it always like, I got to go to college? Because I was told that if you didn't go to college, you weren't about anything. I needed college for sports, so I kept going, but I didn't figure out education until like my junior year in school, where I was like, hey, you know what, maybe I should be paying attention to some of this shit.
For me, I thought college, but I was the first one in my family to get a college degree. I don't know why I was in that headspace, but maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. Because, I made bad grades, and I would tell my friends I could do it if I wanted to. If I put my mind to it, I could do just as good as you, but maybe deep down within myself, I doubted that,
Right.
And so for me, it was almost a challenge to see, can I do it? And so, but I absolutely agree with you. As somebody who went on and has been a teacher for 2 decades, I don't think the traditional path is for everybody. I think taking some time off sometimes can be to your advantage. A lot of kids think, especially, kids at a community college, there's a lot of kids there that are there. You can tell they're not there because they want to be there. They're there because somebody has told them that they've got to do it.
They have to go, yeah.
They have to go. And when you're in a room with 30, 32 students and you're giving a lecture, you can tell who's with you. You can tell who's drifting, and you can tell they've already drifted. They're just there physically, but they're not open to the experience. And there's a lot of those kids, and I would say to you that sometimes going to college is worse than not going.
Because they just end up lost.
Exactly. They get discouraged, and maybe if they had taken a different route in 3 or 4 or 5 years, they would have been open to it if that's what they decided was best for them. I agree with you also on other paths, right? Trades. There's some things that we need as a society, and there are good opportunities to provide for your family.
No college debt.
And no debt.
If you become an electrician, you walk out the door, you're ready to go to work. And if you apply yourself in 3 years, you'd have your own business. I mean, so I said college was important to me, not just for athletics, but also I got my education out of it. But I also had a lot of friends that were going just to play ball. And then the level of competition got a little higher. And as soon as ball was done, as soon as the next semester came, they were gone. And they went to go back. I went to school in Nebraska, so they went back to work on the farm or wherever. But they just bailed if it wasn't for them. And a lot of them then hopped, because in the Midwest, you can still find trade schools. So the more I think about it, as a former teacher, when you look at the scope of the land of education today, are you concerned about the level, the quality of education, especially we're seeing post-pandemic, that even my kids, I pulled most at homeschool just because, I had one of my daughters a straight A student, but then I had to write letters to her relatives and stuff, and there was so much red. If it was a living thing, it would have died from the red marker on it. And I was like, this can't be.
Yeah.
You know, you're an honor student, but you can't, like, you have a run-on sentence that's 10 sentences long. That's a problem, and it's in an age group. You know, when you're in the 8th grade, you should know your commas and your periods and stuff like that. And it's but yet the teacher will say, "Hey, great effort. This feels right." How much does that bother you, or how much does it concern you?
Grade inflation is real. You know, that absolutely happens. I mean, you've seen it firsthand yourself as a parent. It's real. And I think that we've seen things move more towards like the student as customer.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's healthy. You know, I heard so many times in teaching, we need as educators to move to where the student is. And I understand there's a well-intentioned sentiment behind that, but I've always thought we're the ones who have the knowledge. We need to help the students move towards us so that we can tell them these things that they need to know, like not doing run-on sentences and knowing where to put your commas and all of those things, skills that you need. If we meet them there, how, you know, are they going to get better in the way that they need to? And sometimes I wonder about that myself.
Let me ask you this because I want to talk about your show. So what do you think the biggest thing that they've pulled out of schools? Now, for me, what is like my kids' handwriting, right? So I'll be like, well, how are you going to do a signature? And they're like, well, we won't have to. I'm like, but you're just assuming technology is just going to go swimmingly along. Like, what's your signature? Or like wood shop. Like, what do you think the biggest pull away from school is? Is it extracurricular activities? Is it just hard-nosed education? Or is it the little things that make, like, field trips? Because we're not seeing any of that stuff anymore.
I think that it's, you know, the comprehensive answer is it's all of those things. I think that in college, there's been a push towards, I think, not confronting uncomfortable truth.
I would say it's become the feelings versus education. Feelings is, this is how I feel. That doesn't have anything to do with facts or math. Math has nothing to do with feelings. History has nothing to do with feelings. And it seems like everyone's majoring in feelings in the university level. You know, if they don't like something, it has to go away.
I'll tell you when I realized fully how much that is happening. I had a test question that was meant to be just a freebie question, a fun question in the test. Sometimes I'd throw one in, kind of a free one to just tamp down any anxiety somebody was having, give them a chance just to, you know, get a free answer, laugh, calm down, move on. And I had a question where I said, you know, some made up person, you know, Johnny is a Harry Potter fan and he likes to walk around the neighborhood dressed like a wizard. It could be said that this makes Johnny blank. And it was like 3 nonsense answers. And one of them was, I think it was a forced response answer. The only answer I gave them is, you know, Johnny's nuts, Cobb, you know, let's move on to the next question. And it was just intended as funny. And I had a student email me and say, well, if he wants to dress up like a wizard, I'm offended that you would suggest that he's crazy. And I have to email this student back and say, well, you know, it wasn't my intention to offend you, but Johnny doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, this is a fictional multiple choice
like the
question.
Argument whether Bert and Ernie are gay or straight.
Yeah.
Well, they're puppets, so they're neither.
You're reading so much into this. This is a question about a fictitious person that is just meant for you to maybe chuckle and you get a freebie. And the student actually got it wrong. They answered it wrong as a protest because, you know, it had one answer, and then they wanted credit for it afterwards. So it was very theatrical. I gave them their credit for it, but, you know, you roll your eyes and you say, like, geez, like, don't you have any real problems in your life to worry about?
And is that the problem? Is it first world problems that have taken over education?
To the extreme.
And you're going into entertainment where first world problems. Yeah, you just jumped out of the frying pan into the boiling pot.
Yeah.
So how did you go from there to where you are today? Like you're coming on OutKick, you're jumping in both feet wet into what is a perfect time to be on any TV show, given the most contested, highly volatile election tribalism of all time right now, I think, is going on in this country. Welcome. Come on in, man. The water's fine, but the sharks, the teeth are out.
Man, it's quite a career detour. I will tell you that. I don't know that there's a lot of people that leave the community college to host a talk show. So I'm kind of finding my way as I go. But how it happened, to answer your question, is I started a Twitter account about 10 years ago just for fun, just to have a place where I could crack some jokes, maybe look back on the sports figures of my youth. I named it Super 70 Sports. People, it's turned into something that's, more than that, different than that. People say to me, well, why did you name it Super 70 Sports? And the answer is I thought I was going to tweet about me and Joe Green and Reggie Jackson and,
right.
All of those guys.
Morphed. But whenever your heart's into something, it's always the growth. You never know where it's going to go. But when you put your heart into something, so this was something that became a passion for you, and it just kind of grew and morphed, because you never, like I said, I went from throwing guys out of rings to having casual conversations, which is, I've had more jobs and been fired from the best. I'll be fired from here too one day, I'm sure. It's just the way I roll. Retirement seems weird. But you go through all these different phases in your life, and now you find yourself where you're in entertainment. You started out one way, and now how do you bring it all together here? Are you going to be more sports orientated? You're going to talk about life? Because you come across me as very philosophical. Like, you're one of those guys who thinks before he speaks, which is also can be weird in entertainment, because people often don't speak or think before they speak. They read talking points. Like, they'll have and I like to play games with like talking point people, they'll send their questions ahead of time, and I'll never ask them that question, or I'll start to, and then I'll flip it on them to see whether they'll stick to the script or they'll, and 99% of the time, they'll stick to the script. Doesn't matter what the question is, they're going to read their talking points, and you don't strike me as a talking point guy.
I'm not, man. I think at the end of the day, the only thing I know how to do is be me. So I was very clear with everybody up front when I was talking about the possibility of doing this. And it's like, I'm going to be who I am, and we're going to ride with that. And sink or swim, you
can't swim, you drown.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way, because you can't. People do it. They'll embody something. We see it all the time where all of a sudden they'll work for one network and they're so this way, and then they'll go down and they're so that way. And I'm a balls and strikes guy.
Yeah.
I raised chameleons, so I refuse to besmirch their name like that. But I got a lot of monsters. But staying true to yourself is going to be a challenge, because sometimes it's lucrative not to. And that's any advice that I could give you would be, staying true to yourself is great, because you'll always be able to go to sleep at night. And it's a rare thing these days, and they'll come for you. They'll attack you, because it's uncomfortable, because you don't have to practice. And that's what I always tell people. I never have to practice. I don't have to memorize my lines, because I'm speaking true to myself. I'm not going to speak on something I'm not knowledgeable on. And as an educator, I'm sure do you over-prepare or under-prepare?
You over-prepare in the beginning.
Right.
Because I remember the first lecture I ever gave, I was in graduate school, and my professor said, okay, teaching assistant, I'm going to let you have one.
The old TA, yes.
Yeah, the TA got in there, and I remember, man, I walked in I had pages and pages and pages of notes that I was shuffling through, because I was so worried I wasn't going to have 75 minutes, that I'd get up there and be caught with my pants down and, just wasn't ready for it. So I over-prepared in the beginning. Once you've done it for a while, it becomes like breathing.
Because that first lesson plan is nuts. I think I was terrified all summer.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out, and then you got a principal changes it all every 2 minutes or whatever. So, but that preparation does help you in the fast world of when you got a story every week. So for your idea, like, who would be your, like, the guest that you want to sit down and really get to know? Like, what would be your dream guest?
Oh,
Gary's paying attention, so he should probably be able to book it for you if he's not.
There's a lot, man, but Charles Barkley, I would love to sit down with Charles Barkley and really pick his brain.
He's deep. Charles is deep, but he's so just no filter. You'll love it. And
Yeah.
I think it's only going to get worse as he gets older. I think it's terrible that they're not bringing him. The NBA went the other way, because that was one of my favorite shows. I just lived to watch him and Shaq argue to see when Shaq was finally going to swing, because Barkley would get in his head with. Where he reminds me a lot of Muhammad Ali in the way that he kind of speaks in riddles, but he's very deep. But he's not a guy who you're going to want to break a thesaurus out on. You know what I'm saying? Like I love Charles. He would be a good one. You know who else is deep that I didn't realize has become philosophical is Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is like one of the deepest dudes. He says shit that you walk away and you're just like, whoa, you just changed my mind, bro, which is hard to do. Changing minds is hard to do.
It's crazy how Mike has transformed. Mike is a wise man.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge Tyson fan. I was a Tyson fan back in the 80s. I'm a different kind of Tyson fan now. Man, I was a fan of him in the ring, but outside the ring, sometimes Mike seemed like he was really lost.
He was honest.
He was honest
He's
always,
honest.
But Mike Tyson runs deep, man. He is listen to Mike when he's talking. There are opportunities to learn there.
We played in a golf tournament together when I was in the WWE, and then we were both featured in a video game together. And then we ran each other randomly at a Manny Pacquiao fight. And he's just one of those guys who always says something that no matter what you say, you think you're going to hear it all, and then he'll say something to you that will just blow your mind, you know. And he was talking to me, and they interviewed him again, where he's talking about what it means to be great. And I thought it was one of the most profound things ever, because Floyd Mayweather was saying he was greater than Muhammad Ali. And they asked Mike, and Mike just looked at him and goes, "Can he walk his kids to school?" No, he can't. So he's not that great. He's scary. He's got to have people. Muhammad Ali walked his children to school because he was great and the people loved him. He didn't need bodyguards. So when you could walk your children to school, then talk to me about being great. And it just went about his business. And I was just,
you're like, whoa.
Did you hear that explosion? Because my mind's blown. Like, it's just so simple, but yet
cuts
deep.
right through it. Just cuts through to the essence of it.
Now, who would you consider like would be your most difficult interview? Would it be someone that's completely one side or the other, whether it's someone who's left or right or just has a mindset completely different than yours? Because you're laid back. You're not like, I'm a little more like, what? I'm sarcastic by nature. I can't help it. You're a little more laid back. Are you looking for those confrontational interviews? Or are you your goal is to find a common ground? I always like to find common ground first and then have the conversation, because when you really don't know each other, we both were teachers, so It was a common ground thing. We teach you, and then it kind of goes from there. That's my style of doing things. What is your style going to be?
Definitely not confrontational. I mean, I could foresee it if a specific.
I've yet to get an argument on TV because I refuse to argue ideas with strangers. I think that.
Yeah.
When I see people get upset, I'm like, what? It's a talk show, bro. Like,
and we've got so much contentiousness in society now anyway. I would rather, in general, look for common ground and try to find the human side of whoever it is that I'm talking to and kind of get into whatever it is that makes them tick. Who is this person? What motivates them? And asking them questions, as clearly you do, asking people questions that they haven't gotten 1,000 times before. Trying to find that different route to learning something new about this person, because some people, and I'm sure you've done tons of interviews as a subject in your life, and you probably get a lot of the same questions
all the time. Yeah.
All the time. So
it's always wrestling questions.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I've been retired for almost a year and a half now, but it's always like some random weird wrestling question that's on Google that I've been answering for like 10 years. But again, I always look at, if people are asking about you, it's a good thing. So
yeah.
But you just have to wind your way in and out. So what's the name of your new show going to be called?
It's the Ricky Cobb Show.
Ricky Cobb.
So
that's easy.
There you go. Yeah, it took Gary and I about 3 weeks to come up with that. So I'm not sure what that says about us.
No. It says a lot about Gary. he moves slow. He's very patient.
I'll take part of the blame. Yeah, we went back and forth. And
what was the worst name?
Couldn't get it. Well, we were going to call it Ricky Cobb Nails It.
Ricky Cobb Nails It. That was Gary's idea, wasn't it? Feels like him. This was almost called Tyrus Nails It. So I'm just curious if if he's recycling names here.
Yeah, that was one. We talked about that. Then we were going to call it the Ricky Cobb Revolution, and we couldn't.
I don't think you want to use the word revolution.
Yeah,
right now.
exactly.
That's probably not a good idea. It's
Exactly.
Send the wrong message.
So finally, I was just like, F it. Let's just put my name on it and see if that
what
works.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, because mine's maintaining, because that's what I say to people when I don't want to talk to them. How you doing, Tyrus? Maintaining. That's my answer for everything. You see me in the hallway, maintaining. It's because I hate small talk. I'm not a big. If you know somebody and you're like happy to see him, like, hey, what's going on? But like people who just, oh, it's Tyrus. I'm going to talk to him now because we're in the elevator together. We don't have to. There's a little TV screen right there.
Yeah.
You stay on your side. You're going to learn the ways. Like when you get in these elevators, by the way, not saying this building's got a bunch of control freaks, but you don't get to pick your floor yourself. It's picked for you. The elevator's picked for you, so you press 19.
I noticed that, yeah.
It's like, relax, man. I think can walk in and press the floor button, but again, we don't.
It's a little different.
Not criticizing. Not criticizing. But, yeah, you're going to find there's a lot of weird little things here, but you get used to it and you kind of move your way. But the name is everything. And simplicity to me when it comes to a name is always better. Just because then they're like, oh, I'm watching Ricky Cobb. Oh, I know that guy. Because you're kind of stuck in that thing where first someone thinks maybe you're just a big hippie, but we don't have hippies anymore. We probably need them because they could probably help some of the protesters and stuff figure out what exactly they're. How do you feel about that when you see on the college campuses all this protest, and it seems like I can't connect to it because I don't understand it. Because it's coming from October 7th. So to me, it seemed like the protest should be the other way.
A lot of it is contradictory.
It doesn't make sense.
It's very contradictory.
Queers for Hamas. That's like hens for Chick-fil-A. It doesn't make.
Exactly. I mean, it was going on my campus. I was watching it unfold, and I was thinking to myself, some of these folks being very, very outspoken on the half of Hamas, and as you said,
as soon as they saw
how long are you going to last over there? Go over there and tell them how you're happy to join the cause and see how that goes. So I think there's a lot of ignorance there. I don't understand how people can hold simultaneously these opinions that they're just at odds with each other.
Now, as an educator, how did you navigate through that? Because I'm sure you have students who look up to you. You have students who, then you have the other students who are just there. But a lot of times you as a teacher, you just can't help but build personal relationships with your kids. I still get text messages and emails from my guys, and I was teaching them when they were 12. I was teaching 12-year-olds, and they're all in college now. Some of them, and some of them went on to play college ball and stuff. And every once in a while, I'll get an email from one of them, hey, coach, just got married or whatever, and I still love our history class and this, that. So when you see this stuff going, but at the same time, you want to give advice and guidance, but you also have to be careful because, again, if the Harry Potter kid's that day and you give advice, and then he goes home and you get another scathing email about how you influencing other peers in front of him is uncomfortable for him. And how dare you push your thoughts?
Absolutely. It's things that I didn't think about 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and suddenly this is a thing. That question, I had used that for years and years and years. Nobody had ever made a peep about it.
And the one student that identifies as a wizard was sitting in the class that day.
Yeah.
And you're the reason why he doesn't break his wand out to raise his hand, because if you're racist, oppressive wizardry.
Can you believe that I would do such a thing?
I believe it. I see it every day. Yeah.
No, dude, what you said is so true, man. That's what it's all about. When you have those students that you made a genuine connection with and you meant something to them, right? It may have been encouragement that you gave them. It might have been a life lesson that you gave them. It might have been knowledge that you imparted to them, all of the above. But they remembered you and respected you. And so that, to me, that's more, they have the Professor of the Year Award and Master Teacher of the Year Award and all of this stuff. And teachers would have to campaign for it. You'd have to go in.
When you walk into your classroom, your kids are leaning forward when you speak.
Exactly.
That's the award.
It's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's all that matters. The stuff with your colleagues, that's just office politics bullshit. The only thing that really mattered is what happened when you go into the classroom. When do you connect? Do you not connect? Can you form human relationships with these kids? Do you want what's in their best interest? Are you going to go in there and give everything that you can to take the knowledge that you have and make it accessible to them in a way that they can receive it and maybe it can actually do them some good? Because so much with education is people go in and they want to get the grade. I'm going to jump through the hoop, right? You tell me what to memorize. I'm going to spit it back at you. I'll get the letter on my transcript. I'll get the credit hours and I'll move on, and that's it. And that's not what education is, you know?
No, and we're seeing degrees that just don't even make any sense, aren't relevant. Gender studies, I have a master's in gender studies. So doesn't everyone else who goes to a bar on a weekend. Like, you know, it's not a deep thing, and it doesn't translate to anything else. Now that your teaching career is on hiatus because you've never done teaching, and you're moving on your career, is there, given the way that the landscape is now, if you were going to call from a university tomorrow that says, we'll match whatever you're getting at OutKick, but we need you back in the classroom, is that even a consideration given the fact that you're one pissed off Harry Potter wizard away from being out of a job? Is it even worth it?
The short answer is no.
Yeah, and that's the shame. And that's a shame because my answer is no too.
Yeah.
The political is, oh yeah, I'd love to go back teaching, but you can't.
There's a group think too at the college level. There's a group think among the teachers, and if you're not kind of in lockstep with whatever it is that is considered to be appropriate in terms of maybe your political leanings or your philosophy about these things, you know, you can very quickly be ostracized in the average.
Oh yeah,
department.
In the lounge crew, and I was always picked up my break class. I always picked up a class, always substituted, so I didn't have to be in the lounge. So I couldn't stand the cigarettes and the hypocrisy was.
I always preferred. I had some good colleagues, and you know, shout out to them. They know who they are, but I always would much rather be with the students.
Yeah,
and I don't think that every teacher feels that way. There's some teachers they'd rather talk about the students amongst themselves. I would rather be in the classroom dealing with the students and hearing them talk about other professors or whatever. You know, I would never throw anybody under the bus. There is professionalism, but I always saw it from the perspective of the student, I think, more than I saw it from the perspective of my teacher colleagues.
Last question on education. How much of a teacher's personal life do the students need to know? I get this every once in a blue moon, the spouse somehow will come bring something on a cupcake day or something like that. Oh, this is my husband, this is my wife. But other than that, I don't think the teacher, I never thought my personal, whether it's my religious beliefs, political beliefs, or even if I disagreed with the lesson plan, I always felt like as a teacher that was not part of the job. That's a line you have to draw. You're there to educate, not push your personal belief system on your kids, and I always was strongly believe that, but I feel like that has been inherently lost.
Yeah, I used to tell my students, and being a sociology teacher, we're talking about all kinds of stuff, right? That's relevant, you know, the kinds of things that in some cases I'm going to be talking about on the talk show. And what I always said to my students is I said, occasionally my opinion may come out, but you got to understand if that happens, I'm not asking you to think like I think. You're not going to give. And I tell them when they would write papers, I would say, give me a well-written paper that I disagree with every word over some sloppy, half-put-together paper that I happen to agree with. Because at the end of the day, I'm just a guy like everybody else. It's not about what I think. And
but you're challenging them to think on their own terms.
That was the most important thing to me by far. Critical thinking. Think for yourself. If you're just spitting back to me what you think I want to hear, you're not getting it. That's not what this should be about. It should be about trying to help foster in you having the skills to think on your own. And as far as like teachers' personal stuff, you know, I would come in maybe and say something about something funny one of my kids had done or whatever. I think to the extent that you bring up your personal life just to humanize yourself a little bit, just so that they can relate to you.
But you don't break down your Facebook post for this and understand that you're having a fight. Yeah,
exactly.
You know what? Now that we're throwing around names, critical thinking might not have been a bad banner too. You know, but stick with. Always go with your name.
Now I get the good name. Yeah. Where were you a month ago?
Gary keeps me on ice, so you know. But yeah, critical thinking with Richard Cobb. I like, you know, but just the name's good too. So, but I'm saying if you need it, throw it out there.
All right,
maybe it's a segment.
I'm gonna keep it in my back pocket.
You know, like
now.
Bill O'Reilly has the final word, or Owen has their last word, or monologue. Maybe you end it with, "This week, here's some critical thinking."
Yeah, somebody write that down. Can you write that down?
It's being recorded, so I'm sure Gary will edit it out. Yeah. He's got time. Right. Hey, man, it's been a real pleasure, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.